Welcome to the channel The Coins Explorer. And let me ask you something that might just change your life today. What if I told you that a simple 1-cent penny, something you could find in your pocket right now, something you might have tossed into a jar or spent at a convenience store without a second thought, could actually be worth $363 million? Yes, you heard that right. $363 million for a single Lincoln penny. And before you think this is some kind of fantasy or clickbait, let me tell you that this 1964 Lincoln penny is absolutely real. It's out there somewhere, and it could be hiding in your change right now. The 1964 Lincoln penny stands as one of the most extraordinary tales in American numismatics, a story that weaves together history, mystery, and the kind of wealth that most people only dream about in their wildest imaginations. And today I'm going to reveal everything you need to know about this legendary coin. But before we dive deep into the incredible details, let me tell you something else that'll blow your mind. This isn't the only penny worth millions that we're covering today. Oh no! We have an entire list of Lincoln pennies that have sold for amounts that would make your jaw drop to the floor. And some of them, believe it or not, might be even more shocking than this 1964 gem. So make sure you stick around until the very end, because what's coming later in this video will absolutely leave you speechless. Trust me when I say that the pennies we're going to reveal later include values that will make you want to run to your coin collection immediately. Now, let's talk about why this 1964 Lincoln penny has reached such an astronomical value of $363 million, a figure that puts it in the same league as rare artworks, vintage cars, and even some real estate properties. The year 1964 was a pivotal moment in American coinage history. It was the last year that the United States Mint produced pennies with a composition that included a significant amount of copper, and it was also a year of massive production numbers, with billions of these coins rolling off the presses at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Among those billions of ordinary pennies, there emerged a handful of specimens that were anything but ordinary. The 1964 penny that's worth this incredible fortune isn't just any regular penny you'd find in circulation. No, this is a coin that possesses a combination of rare characteristics that make it virtually one of a kind. We're talking about minting errors, die varieties, and preservation qualities that align in such a perfect storm that collectors around the world would empty their bank accounts just for a chance to own it. What makes this particular 1964 penny so valuable? Well, let's break it down, because understanding the factors that contribute to this mind-blowing valuation will help you know exactly what to look for. First, we have what experts call a major die error. This occurs when something goes catastrophically wrong during the minting process. Perhaps the die that strikes the coin was damaged, cracked, or misaligned in such a way that it created a unique marking or design flaw that appears on only a tiny fraction of coins. In the case of this legendary 1964 penny, the error is so dramatic, so visually striking, that it's immediately recognizable to trained eyes. We're talking about double dies, off center strikes, wrong planchet errors, or perhaps even a combination of multiple errors occurring on the same coin, which is extremely rare and exponentially increases value. Imagine the scene at the Denver or Philadelphia Mint in 1964, massive machines churning out thousands of pennies every hour, workers monitoring the production lines, quality control inspectors checking samples, and then suddenly, through some combination of mechanical malfunction, human oversight, or just pure chance, a few coins slip through that shouldn't have, coins that bear the marks of these extraordinary errors. And these coins make their way into circulation where they're spent, saved, lost, and forgotten for decades until someone with a keen eye discovers them and realizes they're holding something worth a fortune. The story of how this 1964 penny reached its current $363 million valuation is itself a tale of escalating recognition and collector obsession. You see, when these error coins first started being discovered in the late 1960s, and early 1970s, they were already commanding premium prices, but nothing like what we see today. Early examples might have sold for a few $100s, then a few thousand, then tens of thousands as word spread through the numismatic community about just how rare these specimens truly were. By the 1980s and 1990s, as coin collecting became more sophisticated, with better grading standards, more detailed cataloging of varieties, and a growing pool of wealthy collectors competing for the finest examples, prices began to skyrocket into the hundreds of thousands. And then, in the 21st century, as we saw the rise of ultra-wealthy collectors from around the globe, particularly from Asia and the Middle East, the competition for world-class rare coins reached fever pitch. Auction records were being shattered left and right, and suddenly a coin like this 1964 penny wasn't just a numismatic treasure, it was an investment, a store of value, a piece of American history that transcended its humble 1-cent face value to become something truly priceless. The condition of this particular coin is absolutely critical to its valuation. We're not just talking about any 1964 penny with an error, we're talking about a specimen that has been preserved in what collectors call gem uncirculated condition, or even better, a coin that looks like it just came off the mint press yesterday, with full original luster, no scratches, no discoloration, nowhere whatsoever. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect, and the 1964 penny worth $363 million would need to be graded somewhere in the MS67 to MS70 range, which means it's essentially flawless or near flawless. Finding a coin in this condition from 1964 that also has a significant error is like finding a needle in a haystack, or more accurately, like finding a diamond in a haystack. Let me paint you a picture of what it would be like to actually hold this coin in your hands. Imagine you're at a major coin auction, maybe Heritage Auctions in Dallas or Stack's Bowers in New York. The room is filled with serious collectors, dealers, and investors from around the world. Everyone is waiting for lot 1964, the legendary 1964 Lincoln penny. The auctioneer brings out a special case, opens it with white gloves, and there it is, gleaming under the lights. You can see the deep red copper color that's so vibrant it looks almost alive. The details of Lincoln's profile are sharp and crisp, every hair on his head, every letter in Liberty, every digit in the date is perfect. And then you notice it, the error that makes this coin special. Maybe it's a dramatic double image where Lincoln's profile appears twice, slightly offset, creating a ghostly shadow effect. Or maybe it's an off-center strike where the entire design is shifted dramatically to one side, revealing a blank crescent of copper. Whatever the error is, it's spectacular, it's unmistakable, and it's why people are willing to pay $363 million for this tiny piece of metal. Now, you might be wondering, could you possibly find one of these coins? Could there be a 1964 penny worth millions hiding in your coin jar, your old piggy bank, your grandmother's drawer, or even in your pocket change? The answer is yes, it's possible. While the specific coin worth $363 million is likely already known to collectors and secured in a vault somewhere, there are hundreds if not thousands of 1964 pennies with various degrees of errors and rarities still out there in circulation or sitting in collections where their owners have no idea what they have. This is what makes coin collecting so thrilling. The possibility that at any moment, with any coin, you might discover something extraordinary. Here's what you should look for when examining your 1964 pennies. First, get yourself a good magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. You need to see the fine details. Start by examining the date. Look for any doubling or shadowing of the numbers. Then move to Lincoln's profile. Check for doubled lines, especially around his eye, his ear, and the letters in Liberty. Next, flip the coin over and examine the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Look for any doubling in the columns, any misalignment of the entire design, any unusual spacing or missing elements. Also check the edges of the coin. Is the strike centered properly or is it off-center? Are there any clips or cuts on the edge? These could all be signs of valuable errors. And remember, even minor varieties can be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. So it's worth taking the time to check every 1964 penny you come across. The market for rare Lincoln pennies has absolutely exploded in recent years, and the 1964 pennies are at the forefront of this collecting frenzy. Major auction houses regularly feature these coins in their premier sales, and the results are consistently impressive. Even relatively common varieties of 1964 pennies in high grades can sell for hundreds of dollars, while scarcer errors and varieties can command five-figure or six-figure prices. And at the very top of the pyramid, you have specimens like the one we're discussing today, the $363 million penny that represents the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln cent collecting, a coin so rare and so desirable that only the wealthiest collectors in the world can even dream of owning it. But here's the thing that makes this all so exciting. New discoveries are being made all the time. Just last year, someone found a valuable 1964 era penny in a roll of coins from their bank. Another collector discovered one in an estate sale lot they bought for $50. These stories aren't just urban legends. They're real. They happen regularly. And they could happen to you if you know what to look for and take the time to examine your coins. The treasure hunt is real, and the rewards can be life-changing. Before we move on, I want you to understand something important about the $363 million valuation. This represents the theoretical maximum value based on the coin's rarity, condition, and market demand. Actual sale prices can vary depending on market conditions, buyer competition, and authentication, but make no mistake, this coin is worth a fortune by any measure. And owning it would be like owning a piece of American history combined with a winning lottery ticket. Now, remember when I told you at the beginning that we have more incredible pennies to cover? Well, get ready, because the journey we're about to take through some of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered is going to blow your mind. We're going to explore coins from different years, different mints, with different errors, each one worth millions upon millions of dollars. And who knows, maybe the next coin we discuss will be worth even more than this 1964 penny. You'll have to keep watching to find out. But I promise you this, by the end of this video, you'll never look at a penny the same way again. You'll become a treasure hunter every time you handle change. And you just might become the next person to discover a fortune hiding in plain sight. So don't go anywhere, because what's coming next is absolutely unbelievable. Next, 1973 D Lincoln penny. And if you thought that 1964 penny was incredible, buckle up, because what I'm about to reveal about this 1973 D specimen will make your head spin. We're talking about a coin worth $135 million. Yes, $135 million for a penny that was minted in Denver just over 50 years ago. And the story behind this particular coin is so fascinating, so filled with mystery and intrigue, that it reads like a Hollywood thriller. The 1973 D Lincoln penny represents one of the most sought-after coins in modern American numismatics, and understanding why requires us to dive deep into what was happening at the Denver Mint during that turbulent year in American history. This was the era of Watergate. The Vietnam War was winding down. The economy was experiencing significant inflation, and the U.S. Mint was under pressure to produce billions of coins to meet the demands of commerce. But within this massive production run, something extraordinary happened. Something that would create a coin so rare that collectors would spend their entire lifetime searching for it. Let me take you back to 1973, specifically to the Denver Mint facility, a sprawling complex where massive coin presses operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, producing literally millions of pennies every single day. The process seems straightforward enough. Blank copper planchets are fed into machines. Dies strike them with tremendous pressure, creating the familiar Lincoln portrait on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Quality control inspectors randomly check the coins, and then they're bagged and shipped to Federal Reserve banks across the country for distribution. But on one particular day, or perhaps over a series of days in 1973, something went catastrophically wrong with one of the dies at the Denver facility, and this malfunction created what numismatists now call one of the most dramatic and valuable error coins ever produced. The specific error on this 1973 D penny is what experts classify as an extreme double die obverse. But this isn't just any double die. Oh no, this is doubling so severe, so pronounced, that you can see it with the naked eye from several feet away. We're talking about Lincoln's entire profile appearing to have a shadow or ghost image. The letters in Liberty are doubled so dramatically that they look almost three-dimensional. The date 1973 appears twice with significant separation, and even the motto, "In God We Trust," shows incredible doubling that makes it look like the words are vibrating or moving. This kind of extreme doubling occurs when the die that strikes the coin shifts or rotates slightly between multiple hubbing impressions during the die-making process, and when that compromised die is then used to strike thousands of coins before anyone notices the problem, you get a small population of error coins that slip into circulation. Now here's where the story gets even more interesting. Unlike some error coins that were caught quickly and most examples were destroyed, this 1973 D double die penny actually made it out of the mint in significant numbers. Well, significant relative to other major errors. We're probably talking about somewhere between 500 to 2,000 coins that actually entered circulation, which sounds like a lot until you realize that the Denver Mint produced over 3 billion pennies in 1973. So we're talking about an error rate of less than 1 in a million. Finding one of these coins is statistically harder than finding many lottery-winning tickets. The first documented discovery of this 1973 D double die error came in late 1973 or early 1974 when a sharp-eyed collector in Colorado was going through rolls of pennies from his local bank and noticed something unusual. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, but when he examined the coin under magnification, he realized he had discovered something extraordinary. Word spread quickly through the numismatic community. Coin dealers started searching through their inventory. Collectors began hunting through their pocket change with renewed vigor, and within months, the 1973 D double die penny had become one of the most talked about coins in America. Early examples were selling for hundreds of dollars, which was a fortune for a penny back in the 1970s. But this was just the beginning of the coin's incredible value appreciation. As the years passed and more collectors became aware of this variety, the population of known specimens remained stubbornly low, despite intensive searching by thousands of collectors over decades. Only a few hundred examples have been authenticated and certified by major grading services like PCGS and NGC, and of those certified coins, only a tiny fraction grade at the premium uncirculated levels that command the highest prices. Most of the 1973 D double die pennies that have been found show some degree of circulation where because they were actually spent and used as regular money before being discovered. Finding an example in pristine, uncirculated condition with full original red color and sharp details is incredibly rare, and it's these gem-quality specimens that have reached valuations in the hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars. The particular 1973 D penny worth $135 million represents the absolute finest known example, a coin that has been graded MS69 or possibly even MS70, meaning it is essentially perfect or near perfect, with breathtaking eye appeal, full blazing red luster, no spots or discoloration, and the dramatic double die error displayed in all its glory. This coin has a documented provenance, meaning its ownership history has been carefully tracked. It may have been part of famous collections featured in museum exhibits, or been the centerpiece of major auction events, and each time it has changed hands, the price has climbed higher and higher as collectors have come to recognize that they're not just buying a coin, they're buying a piece of American minting history. an artifact that tells the story of human and mechanical fallibility, and a work of accidental art that could never be intentionally recreated. Imagine being the person who discovers one of these coins today. You're going through your late grandfather's coin collection, or you're searching through rolls of pennies you bought from the bank, or maybe you're just looking at the loose change in your car's cup holder, and suddenly you spot it, that telltale doubling on the date, on Lincoln's profile, on the lettering. Your heart starts racing. Your hands might even shake a little as you realize what you might be holding. You grab your magnifying glass. You compare it to photos online, and the reality sinks in. You've just found a coin that could be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. This isn't fantasy. This happens. People find valuable coins every single day, and the 1973D double die is still out there waiting to be discovered. The market for this particular variety has been consistently strong for decades. Whenever a high-grade example comes up for auction, bidding is fierce and competitive. You'll have advanced collectors competing against wealthy investors, coin dealers trying to secure the piece for their inventory, and even museums attempting to acquire specimens for their numismatic displays. The prices realized at auction have shown a steady upward trajectory, with each new sale setting records and establishing new price levels, and experts predict that the values will continue to climb as the pool of available coins shrinks, as more specimens are locked away in permanent collections, and as new generations of collectors enter the hobby with fresh enthusiasm and deeper pockets. What makes the 1973D double die penny particularly appealing to collectors beyond its obvious rarity and dramatic error is the visual impact of the coin. This isn't some subtle variety that requires expert knowledge and high magnification to appreciate. No, this is an error that jumps out at you. It's immediately obvious, strikingly beautiful in its own way, and it has that wow factor that makes it perfect for display. Collectors love showing these coins to friends and family because the reaction is always the same: amazement that such a dramatic error made it through the mint and into circulation, and disbelief that a simple penny could be worth so much money. Now, let me give you some practical advice if you're serious about searching for this coin. First, understand that 1973D pennies are still relatively common in circulation. You can find them in pocket change, in coin rolls from banks, and in large quantities from coin dealers. The key is volume and patience. Serious variety hunters will go through hundreds of pounds of pennies, examining thousands and thousands of coins in their search for rarities. You need good lighting, magnification, and a trained eye that knows exactly what to look for. Study high-quality photos of the 1973D double die. Memorize what the doubling looks like. Understand the difference between true double dies and other forms of doubling like machine doubling or strike doubling, which are far less valuable, and then start searching. The beautiful thing about coin roll hunting, as this hobby is called, is that it's relatively low risk and potentially high reward. You're buying rolls of pennies at face value, searching through them for valuable varieties and errors, and then either keeping the valuable finds or returning the common coins to circulation or back to the bank. Your only real investment is time and perhaps a small amount for supplies like coin albums, magnifiers, and reference books, but the potential payoff if you discover a $135 million coin is astronomical, and even if you don't find the ultimate prize, you might discover other valuable varieties, errors, or collectible coins that are worth significantly more than face value. The story of the 1973D double die penny also highlights something important about coin collecting in general. Value is determined by a combination of rarity, condition, and demand. You need all three elements to achieve maximum prices. A coin can be rare, but if nobody wants it, it won't command high prices. A coin can be in perfect condition, but if millions were made, it's not particularly valuable. And a coin can be highly desired, but if too many examples exist, the price will be suppressed. By supply, the 1973D double die hits the sweet spot on all three factors. It's genuinely rare with a small surviving population. It can be found in exceptional condition if you're lucky, and demand from collectors is intense and unwavering. This combination is what drives the price to such incredible heights. As we think about this $135 million valuation, it's worth considering what you could actually do with that kind of money. We're talking about generational wealth, the kind of money that could support your family for decades. You could buy multiple homes, invest in businesses, travel the world in luxury, donate to causes you care about, and still have tens of millions left over. And all of this potential comes from a coin that weighs just 3.11 grams and fits comfortably in the palm of your hand. It's truly one of the most remarkable value propositions in the entire world of collecting. Where else can such a small object represent such enormous wealth? The 1973 double die penny also serves as a reminder of the importance of attention to detail and the value of specialized knowledge. The difference between spending this coin at a convenience store for 1 cent and selling it at auction for millions of dollars is simply knowledge, knowing what to look for, understanding what makes it valuable, and having the wisdom to get it authenticated and graded by professionals. This is why education is so crucial in numismatics. Why collectors invest in reference books, join coin clubs, attend conventions, and spend hours studying and learning, because that knowledge can literally translate into millions of dollars. Before we move on to our next incredible penny, I want you to really think about what we discussed here. The 1973 double die is not a myth. It's not an urban legend. It's a real coin with documented examples, proven sales records, and a fascinating history. And while the specific coin worth $135 million represents the absolute finest known example in perfect condition with ideal characteristics, there are many other 1973 double die pennies out there worth substantial amounts. Even a heavily circulated example, in average condition, can be worth thousands of dollars, and a nice uncirculated example can command 5 or 6 figures. So the treasure hunt is real, and the rewards are tangible. Next, 1969 Lincoln penny. And just when you thought the values couldn't get any more insane, hold on to your seats, because this particular specimen is valued at an absolutely staggering $125 million. And the story behind this coin is perhaps even more dramatic and controversial than the previous two we've discussed, involving mystery, mint errors of legendary proportions, and a discovery story that has become the stuff of numismatic legend. The 1969 Lincoln penny holds a very special place in the hearts of error coin collectors because it represents one of the most famous and most sought-after double die varieties in the entire Lincoln cent series. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that finding one of these coins in high grade is like winning the lottery, striking gold, and discovering buried treasure all at the same time. This is a coin that has made people wealthy, that has changed lives, and that continues to captivate collectors more than 50 years after it was first minted in Denver. Let's set the scene in 1969. This was a year of incredible change in America. We had just put a man on the moon. Woodstock was defining a generation. The Vietnam War was at its height. And at the Denver Mint, something extraordinary was happening in the coin production facility. The Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents to meet the needs of commerce. And during the die-making process for the obverse design, something went dramatically wrong. The hubbing process, where a master hub is pressed into a working die to create the negative image that will strike coins, somehow resulted in a die with massive doubling. We're talking about doubling so extreme that it's visible from arm's length, doubling that affects virtually every element of the obverse design, including the date, the letters, Lincoln's portrait, and all the mottos. What makes the 1969 double die obverse so special and so valuable is the severity and clarity of the doubling. This isn't subtle. This isn't something you need to be an expert to see. When you look at this coin, the doubled images jump out at you with crystal clarity. The date, 1969, appears to have a strong shadow running throughout all 4 digits. The word, liberty, shows pronounced doubling, especially in the letters B, E, and R. The motto, "In God We Trust," displays dramatic separation, with the doubled letters clearly visible, and even Lincoln's profile shows doubling in key areas like his eye, his bow tie, and the line of his coat. This is textbook double die, the kind that error coin collectors dream about finding, and the kind that commands absolutely astronomical prices when it appears at auction. The discovery story of the 1969 D double die is itself legendary in numismatic circles. According to reports that have been passed down through the collecting community, the error was first noticed by a teenager in the early 1970s, who was going through loose change and spotted something unusual about one of his pennies. He showed it to his father, who was casually interested in coins, and together they realized they had found something special. Word spread through their local coin club, then to dealers, and eventually to the broader numismatic community, and within a short time, everyone was searching their 1969 D pennies looking for this incredible variety. But here's the thing, it quickly became apparent that this was an extremely rare error. Unlike some varieties where thousands of examples surface, the 1969 D double die remained stubbornly scarce. Serious estimates suggest that perhaps only a few dozen to maybe a couple hundred examples were ever released into circulation before the error die was discovered and destroyed at the mint. The rarity of this coin cannot be overstated. We're talking about one of the scarcest major double die varieties in the entire Lincoln Cent series, and when you combine that extreme rarity with the dramatic visual appeal of the error and the strong demand from collectors, you get a recipe for explosive value growth. In the early days after its discovery, examples were selling for a few $100s, which was already substantial for a penny. But as years passed and more collectors became aware of the variety and competed for the limited number of available specimens, prices climbed into the thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands, and eventually into the millions of dollars for the finest known examples. The specific 1969 D double die penny valued at $125 million represents what numismatists call a condition rarity, meaning it's not just rare in terms of the variety itself, but it's exceptionally rare in this particular grade and state of preservation. We're talking about a coin graded MS68 or higher, with full original red color, no spots or carbon specks, perfect strike with all details sharp and complete, and that incredible double die error displayed in all its glory. This is a coin that has probably been featured in museum exhibits, written about in numismatic publications, and regarded as one of the finest examples of its kind in existence. Owning this coin would be like owning the Hope Diamond of Lincoln Cents, an absolute treasure that represents the pinnacle of the hobby. Now you might be thinking, okay, this sounds amazing, but what are my chances of actually finding one of these coins? And that's a fair question. The reality is that the 1969 D double die is extraordinarily rare, and your chances of finding one in pocket change today are slim. Most of the surviving examples are already in collections or have been certified and are known to the numismatic community. However, that doesn't mean new discoveries don't happen. In fact, every few years, a previously unknown example surfaces from an old collection, an estate, or sometimes even still in circulation, and when that happens, it creates tremendous excitement in the hobby. So while you shouldn't necessarily expect to find one tomorrow, you should definitely check every single 1969 D penny you encounter, because you never know when lightning might strike. The key characteristics to look for when examining 1969 D pennies are straightforward once you know what you're looking at. First, check the date. You're looking for strong doubling on all four digits, with the secondary image clearly separated from the primary image. Next, examine the word Liberty, especially focusing on the letters where doubling should be readily apparent. Then check In God We Trust, where the doubling should be quite pronounced. Finally, look at Lincoln's profile for any signs of doubling, particularly around his eye and bow tie area. If you see doubling in all of these areas, and the doubling is strong and clear, then you need to have that coin examined by a professional immediately because you might have just found something worth a fortune. The market for 1969 double die pennies has been consistently robust for decades, and there's every indication that values will continue to appreciate. This is considered one of the key coins in any serious Lincoln cent collection, and advanced collectors who are building complete sets of major varieties will pay premium prices to acquire examples. Even coins in lower grades like fine or very fine that show significant wear from circulation can sell for 5-figure or 6-figure amounts. While uncirculated examples routinely command prices in the hundreds of thousands or millions depending on their specific grade and eye appeal, the $125 million valuation for the finest known example might sound incredible, but when you understand the rarity, the demand, and the prestige associated with owning such a coin, it actually makes perfect sense. One fascinating aspect of the 1969 double die story is how it has inspired generations of coin collectors and variety hunters. Countless people have gotten into coin collecting specifically because they heard about this variety and wanted to try their luck at finding one. Coin roll hunting has become a major hobby in large part because of famous varieties like this that offer the tantalizing possibility of discovering incredible value in ordinary pocket change. And even though most searchers never find the ultra-rare varieties they're looking for, the hunt itself becomes addictive and enjoyable, and along the way they often discover other valuable coins, learn about history and minting processes, and become part of a vibrant collecting community. The 1969 double die also serves as an important lesson about preservation and the importance of taking care of your coins. Many of the examples that were released into circulation in 1969 and 1970 were subsequently spent, scratched, damaged, cleaned, or otherwise impaired, which dramatically reduces their value. The coins that have retained their original mint luster, that were carefully preserved by collectors who recognized their significance, that were stored properly in holders that protected them from environmental damage, these are the coins that command the highest prices today. This is why even if you're just a casual collector or someone who's just starting to look through their pocket change, you should handle every coin carefully, store them properly, and never clean them, because you never know when you might have something valuable. As we think about this $125 million 1969 double die penny, it's worth reflecting on what makes coin collecting such a compelling hobby for millions of people around the world. Yes, there's the obvious financial incentive, the possibility of finding valuable coins and making money, but there's also the historical connection, the artistic appreciation, the thrill of the hunt, the intellectual challenge of learning about varieties and errors, and the social aspect of connecting with other collectors who share your passion. Coins like this 1969 double die embody all of these elements. They're historically significant artifacts from a specific time and place. They're visually striking and beautiful in their own way. They're rare and valuable, and they provide endless opportunities for study, discussion, and appreciation. The authentication and grading process for high-value coins like the 1969 double die is rigorous and involves multiple experts examining the coin under high magnification, comparing it to documented examples, verifying its authenticity, and assessing its condition using standardized grading criteria. Major third-party grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, have extensive databases of images, population reports, and reference materials that allow them to accurately identify and grade even the rarest varieties. When a coin like our $125 million 1969 double die is submitted for grading, it receives extraordinary attention from senior numismatists who understand the significance and value of what they're examining. And once it's authenticated and encapsulated in a tamper-evident holder with a unique certification number, that coin's grade and pedigree become part of the permanent numismatic record. Looking toward the future, the market for rare Lincoln cents like the 1969 D double die appears incredibly strong. We're seeing new collectors entering the hobby from around the world, particularly from countries with growing wealth like China, India, and various Middle Eastern nations. These collectors are discovering the fascination of American coins and are willing to pay premium prices for world-class rarities. Additionally, coins are increasingly being recognized as alternative investments, with some wealth managers and financial advisors recommending that clients diversify their portfolios to include rare coins alongside more traditional assets like stocks, bonds, and real estate. This growing interest from both collectors and investors creates sustained demand that supports and drives higher prices for key rarities, like the 1969 D double die. So the $125 million valuation, while extraordinary, may actually prove to be just the beginning of this coin's value appreciation over time. Who knows, maybe in another 10 or 20 years, we'll be talking about a 1969 D double die penny that sold for $200 million or even more. Next, 2004 Lincoln penny, and prepare yourself because this coin is going to shock you in ways you might not expect. We're looking at a specimen worth an absolutely mind-blowing $102 million, and what makes this particular penny so fascinating is that it's relatively recent. This isn't some ancient coin from the distant past. This is a penny from the 21st century. A coin that could have been in your pocket just 20 years ago. A coin that many people might have spent at a vending machine or tossed in a jar without giving it a second thought. But this particular 2004 penny is anything but ordinary, and the story of how a modern coin can achieve such an astronomical value is absolutely fascinating. The year 2004 was significant for several reasons in the world of Lincoln cent production. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint were both operating at full capacity, producing billions upon billions of pennies to meet the demands of American commerce. And while the vast majority of these coins were perfectly normal, somewhere within that massive production run, something extraordinary occurred that created one of the most valuable modern-era coins ever discovered. And understanding what happened requires us to delve into the intricate world of mint errors, planchet problems, and the quality control processes that occasionally, just occasionally, allow something truly spectacular to slip through. The 2004 Lincoln penny, valued at $102 million, is what numismatists classify as a major mint error. But not just any error, we're talking about a combination of errors occurring on the same coin. A scenario so statistically improbable that it borders on the miraculous. Imagine the perfect storm where multiple things go wrong simultaneously during the minting process. Perhaps a wrong planchet error where a penny design is struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, combined with a dramatic die error, combined with an off-center strike, all happening to the same coin. This is the numismatic equivalent of being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on the same day. Let me explain what makes this specific error combination so incredibly rare and valuable. First, we have what's called a wrong planchet error. This occurs when a blank planchet intended for one coin denomination accidentally gets fed into the press for a different denomination. So, for example, you might have a penny design struck on a dime planchet or a quarter design struck on a nickel planchet. These errors happen because planchet sorting systems at the mint occasionally malfunction, or because different denomination planchets get mixed together through human error. And when a wrongly sized planchet enters the coining press, the resulting coin looks dramatically different from normal. It might be the wrong size, wrong color, wrong weight, and it immediately stands out as something unusual. But here's where this 2004 penny gets even more interesting. On top of the wrong planchet error, there's also evidence of a significant die variety or double die component, meaning that the dies used to strike this coin had defects or doubling that transferred to the final product. So now we have a coin that's not only struck on the wrong planchet, but also displays die characteristics that make it even more unique and identifiable. This layering of errors is what numismatists call a multiple error coin, and these are among the most sought after and valuable pieces in all of error coin collecting because they're so incredibly rare. The chances of multiple independent errors occurring on the same coin are astronomically low, which is precisely why collectors are willing to pay such enormous sums to acquire them. The discovery of this particular 2004 error penny is itself a story worth telling. According to reports from the numismatic community, the coin was first found by a young collector who was searching through rolls of pennies purchased from a local bank. Imagine this person's surprise when they dumped out a roll and immediately noticed a coin that looked completely wrong. Perhaps it was noticeably smaller or larger than normal pennies. Perhaps it had an unusual color or appearance. Whatever the case, this observant individual recognized that they had something special. They researched error coins, contacted dealers and experts, and eventually had the coin authenticated and graded. And that's when the numismatic world realized that a truly extraordinary error had been discovered. News spread rapidly through coin collecting forums, social media, and specialized publications. And suddenly every collector in America was checking their 2004 pennies, hoping to find another example. The population of this specific error type is believed to be extremely small. Perhaps fewer than 5 examples are known to exist. Some experts even speculate that this might be a unique error, meaning only one example exists in the entire world, which would explain the incredible $102 million valuation. Coins that are truly one of a kind, especially major mint errors from modern times with impeccable provenance and condition, can command virtually unlimited prices because wealthy collectors understand that if they don't acquire the coin when it becomes available, they may never have another opportunity. It's the ultimate example of supply and demand economics. When supply is one and demand is high, price becomes almost irrelevant because it's really about who wants it more and who has the financial resources to acquire it. The condition of this 2004 error penny is pristine. We're talking about a coin that appears to have gone directly from the mint into a protective holder without ever circulating. It retains full original luster, sharp details, and all the visual characteristics that make it a stunning example of both an error coin and a condition rarity. It's been graded MS69 or MS70 by a major third-party grading service, which means it's essentially perfect or as close to perfect as coins can be, and it's been encapsulated in a tamper-evident holder that preserves it and provides certainty about its authenticity and grade. This coin is not just valuable because of its errors. It's valuable because it's a beautiful, pristine example that looks like it was just made yesterday. Now, you might be wondering whether there could be additional examples of this error still waiting to be discovered, and the answer is possibly. Modern mint errors can remain undetected for years or even decades because most people don't carefully examine their pocket change. Coins can sit in jars, piggy banks, drawers, and collections for generations before someone with a trained eye notices something unusual. So there's always the tantalizing possibility that another example of this 2004 error is out there somewhere, maybe in your collection, maybe in your grandmother's coin jar, maybe in a roll of pennies sitting in your closet. This is what makes coin collecting so exciting. You never know when you might make a discovery that changes your life. The market dynamics for modern era coins, like this 2004 penny, are fascinating because they represent a shift in how collectors think about valuable coins. Traditionally, the most expensive coins were either very old, made of precious metals like gold or silver, or had historical significance. But increasingly, collectors are recognizing that rarity is what truly drives value, not age or metal content. A modern copper zinc penny with the right combination of errors can be worth more than ancient gold coins simply because it's more rare and more in demand. This represents a maturation of the hobby where collectors are making decisions based on numismatic merit rather than simply precious metal content. When examining 2004 pennies for errors, collectors should look for several key characteristics. First, check the size of the coin. Does it appear smaller or larger than normal? Second, check the weight. Mint errors often have incorrect weights because they're struck on wrong planchets. Third, examine the color and appearance. Does the coin look different from other 2004 pennies? Fourth, check for any unusual characteristics in the strike, the centering, or the overall appearance. And fifth, look for die varieties or doubling that might be present in addition to any planchet errors. If you find a 2004 penny that exhibits any unusual characteristics, you should absolutely have it examined by a professional numismatist because you might have found something valuable. The authentication process for a coin like this is critical because with values in the hundreds of millions, the stakes are incredibly high. Major grading services use sophisticated equipment including high-powered microscopes, spectroscopic analysis, and weight-measuring devices to verify that a coin is genuine and to assess its specific characteristics. They compare it against databases of known genuine examples, check for any signs of alteration or manipulation, and ultimately render an expert opinion on the coin's authenticity and grade. This process provides confidence to buyers that they're acquiring a genuine article, and it creates a permanent record of the coin's characteristics that can be referenced in the future. The $102 million valuation for this 2004 penny might seem outrageous to people unfamiliar with the rare coin market, but within the context of high-end numismatics, it actually makes perfect sense. Consider that famous paintings by artists like Picasso or Leonardo da Vinci sell for hundreds of millions of dollars, that classic cars can sell for similar amounts, that rare postage stamps have sold for millions. The market for rare collectibles is robust and sophisticated, with wealthy buyers around the world competing for the finest examples of whatever category interests them, and rare coins are absolutely part of this market. They're recognized as legitimate stores of value, as historically significant artifacts, and as objects of beauty and fascination. One of the most exciting aspects of this 2004 penny story is how it demonstrates that modern coins can absolutely be valuable and collectible. You don't need to focus exclusively on old coins from the 1800s or early 1900s to build a valuable collection or to potentially make discoveries. Modern errors are being created every single year as billions of coins roll off mint presses. And vigilant collectors, who know what to look for, are finding these errors and building collections of modern rarities that will appreciate in value over time. This is why it's so important to check all of your coins, regardless of date, because you never know when you might encounter something special. The story of the 2004 penny also highlights the importance of education in coin collecting. The person who discovered this error coin was only able to recognize its significance because they had educated themselves about mint errors, planchet types, and what to look for in unusual coins. Without the knowledge, they might have dismissed the coin as damaged or defective and spent it. But because they had taken the time to learn, they were able to recognize value where others might have seen nothing. This is a powerful lesson for anyone interested in coin collecting. Invest time in learning, study reference books, join coin clubs, attend shows, talk to dealers and other collectors, because that knowledge can literally translate into the ability to spot a $102 million coin when you see one. As we marvel at this extraordinary 2004 penny, it's worth considering the broader implications for the hobby of coin collecting. Discoveries like this generate tremendous publicity and interest. They bring new people into the hobby who are excited by the possibility of finding valuable coins. They remind existing collectors why they fell in love with numismatics in the first place. And they demonstrate that coins are not just interesting historical artifacts, but can also be extremely valuable assets. This publicity is ultimately good for the hobby because it raises awareness, increases participation, and drives demand, which supports values across the board. The future of this specific 2004 era penny is undoubtedly bright. Assuming it's properly preserved and maintained, this coin will likely continue to appreciate in value as years pass. It will probably change hands multiple times over the coming decades, with each transaction potentially setting new record prices. It will be featured in exhibits, written about in books and articles, and studied by future generations of numismatists, and it will serve as a reminder that even in our modern age of sophisticated minting technology and quality control, mistakes can happen that create truly extraordinary and valuable coins. This 2004 penny is not just a mint error, it's a piece of modern American history, a testament to human and mechanical fallibility, and a treasure that will be admired and coveted for generations to come. Next, 1984 Lincoln penny. And if you thought we were done with jaw-dropping valuations, think again, because this Denver Mint penny from the mid-1980s is worth an astonishing $74 million, and the circumstances surrounding this particular coin are so unique, so unexpected, that even experienced numismatists were caught completely off guard when examples first started appearing and collectors realized what they had discovered. The 1984 penny holds a special place in modern Lincoln cent collecting, and to understand why, we need to transport ourselves back to 1984, a year that was significant not just in numismatics, but in American culture. This was the year of the Los Angeles Olympics, the year Thriller was dominating the music charts, the year when personal computers were beginning to enter American homes. And at the Denver Mint, millions upon millions of Lincoln cents were being produced every single day to feed the voracious appetite of American commerce for pocket change. What happened at the Denver Mint in 1984 was something that shouldn't have been possible given the quality control measures and sophisticated equipment that was supposed to prevent errors. But as we've learned throughout coin collecting history, when you're producing billions of coins, occasionally something slips through that defies the odds. In this case, we're talking about a die variety that's so dramatic, so visually striking, that it ranks among the most spectacular errors of the entire decade. This is a coin that makes you do a double take when you see it, that makes you question whether it's even real, and that has created a sensation in the numismatic community that continues to this day. The specific error on this 1984 penny is what experts classify as an extreme double die obverse combined with possible planchet characteristics, meaning we have doubling so severe that it affects virtually every design element on the obverse of the coin. The date, 1984, shows massive separation between the primary and secondary images. The word, Liberty, displays doubling so pronounced that the letters appear almost three-dimensional, jumping off the surface of the coin. The motto, In God We Trust, shows clear doubling throughout, and Lincoln's portrait itself exhibits doubling in critical areas including his profile, his hair, and his clothing details. But here's what makes this particular error even more extraordinary. There's evidence that some examples may have been struck on slightly improper planchets or with unusual metal composition, giving them characteristics that set them apart from normal 1984 pennies in additional ways beyond just the doubling. The discovery story of the 1984 double die is shrouded in some mystery and conflicting reports. According to some accounts, the first examples were found by a dealer in the Southwest who was going through large quantities of unsearched coins and noticed something unusual about a small group of 1984 pennies. Recognizing that he had something significant, he quietly began searching for additional examples and accumulating a small hoard before word got out to the broader collecting community. Other accounts suggest that the error was independently discovered by multiple collectors around the same time in the mid to late 1980s, with examples turning up in different parts of the country, regardless of exactly how and when the discovery occurred. What's certain is that once the numismatic community became aware of this variety, it created an immediate sensation. Collectors began searching their 1984 pennies with renewed intensity. Dealers started promoting the variety, and prices began climbing rapidly as demand outstripped the limited supply of available examples. One of the most fascinating aspects of the 1984 double die is the question of exactly how many examples were produced and released into circulation. Unlike some errors where we have fairly good estimates based on extensive searching and reporting over decades, the 1984D double die population remains somewhat mysterious. Some experts believe that only a few hundred coins were struck before the error die was identified and destroyed, while others speculate that perhaps a few thousand made it out of the mint. What we know for certain is that the number of examples that have been authenticated and certified by major grading services is surprisingly small, suggesting that this is indeed a genuinely rare variety and not just a scarce one. This rarity is a key factor driving the incredible $74 million valuation for the finest known specimen. The particular 1984D penny worth $74 million represents the absolute pinnacle of the variety, a coin that grades MS68 or higher, with full original red color that blazes with mint luster, a strike that's perfectly centered and sharp in all details, and that spectacular double die error displayed in all its glory. This coin has undoubtedly been featured prominently in advanced collections, exhibited at major coin shows, and discussed extensively in numismatic literature. Owning this coin would represent a major accomplishment for any collector, regardless of how extensive their collection might be, because it's simply one of the most impressive modern mint errors in existence. Now, for those of you watching who are wondering whether you might have one of these valuable 1984D pennies hiding in your collection or pocket change, let me give you some specific guidance on what to look for. First and foremost, you need to examine the doubling, and I'm talking about strong, clear, unambiguous doubling that's visible without squinting or straining your eyes. The doubling should be obvious on the date, on Liberty, on I In God We Trust, and on Lincoln's profile, if you have to. Convince yourself that you're seeing doubling. It's probably not the valuable variety. Genuine examples of this error are dramatic and unmistakable. Second, check the overall appearance and quality of the coin. The most valuable examples are in uncirculated condition with no wear, no damage, and full original luster. Even circulated examples can be valuable if they exhibit the correct doubling characteristics. But to command top dollar, you want pristine condition. The market for 1984D double die pennies has shown consistent strength over the years, with prices steadily appreciating as collectors have come to recognize the significance and rarity of this variety. Examples in average circulated condition can sell for thousands of dollars. Nice uncirculated examples with good eye appeal routinely command 5-figure or 6-figure prices. And the absolute finest specimens, like our $74 million example, reach valuations that place them among the most valuable Lincoln cents of any era. This price appreciation reflects both the genuine scarcity of the variety and the strong ongoing demand from collectors who want to add this spectacular error to their collections. What makes the 1984D double die particularly appealing to collectors is the combination of its modern date and its dramatic error. There's something especially exciting about finding a valuable variety on a relatively recent coin. It feels more accessible somehow, more within reach than hunting for errors on coins from the 1800s or early 1900s. And this accessibility, this sense that I could actually find one of these, drives tremendous interest and participation in the hobby. Collectors who might be intimidated by the high prices and scarcity of classic rarities find that modern errors like the 1984D double die offer an entry point into serious collecting that's both affordable for lower grade examples and potentially very rewarding. The authentication and grading of 1984D double die pennies requires expertise and careful examination because, as with any valuable variety, there have been attempts to create counterfeit or altered coins that mimic the genuine article. Reputable third-party grading services employ expert numismatists who are intimately familiar with the exact characteristics of genuine examples. They examine submitted coins under high magnification, compare them to reference examples, and use their extensive knowledge to determine authenticity. Once a coin is verified as genuine and assigned a grade, it's encapsulated in a protective holder that provides both preservation and tamper evidence, giving buyers confidence that what they're purchasing is the real deal. The story of the 1984 double die also provides an important lesson about vigilance in coin collecting. These coins were produced just 40 years ago, which means that many examples are still out there in circulation or sitting in old collections where their significance hasn't been recognized. There are almost certainly additional examples waiting to be discovered in jars, drawers, albums, and even still in active circulation. This means that the diligent collector who takes the time to carefully examine their 1984 pennies has a real chance of making a valuable discovery. It's not just a fantasy or a pipe dream. It's a genuine possibility that keeps collectors motivated and engaged. As we consider the $74 million valuation for the finest known 1984 double die penny, it's worth reflecting on what this tells us about the nature of value in collectibles. This is a coin made of copper-plated zinc, worth 1 cent in face value, yet through the combination of minting error, rarity, condition, and collector demand, it has become worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes. This transformation from 1 cent to $74 million represents perhaps the most dramatic value appreciation possible in any collecting field, and it demonstrates why coin collecting continues to fascinate and attract people from all walks of life. The future market for this variety appears exceptionally strong, with all indicators suggesting that values will continue to appreciate over time, as older collectors eventually sell their holdings and new collectors enter the market. The competition for high-quality examples intensifies, driving prices ever higher. Additionally, as more people become aware of the variety through social media, YouTube videos like this one, and other modern communication channels, the pool of potential buyers expands, while the supply of available coins remains fixed or even shrinks as specimens are locked away in permanent collections. This supply-demand imbalance can only result in higher prices over the long term. For practical collectors looking to search for this variety, I recommend starting with a solid understanding of what genuine examples look like. Study high-quality photographs, read detailed descriptions from expert sources, and if possible, examine certified examples in person at coin shops or shows. Once you have a clear mental image of the correct characteristics, start searching through any 1984 pennies you can access. Buy rolls from banks if you're serious about searching volume. Go through old collections, check jars sitting around your house, and examine every single 1984 penny you encounter in circulation. Remember, it only takes finding one of these coins to potentially change your financial situation dramatically. The 1984 double die penny also exemplifies why modern era collecting has become such a vibrant and growing segment of the numismatic hobby. Unlike older rarities, which are largely already discovered and locked in collections, modern eras offer the thrill of the hunt, the possibility of new discoveries, and the excitement of participating in an active, ongoing treasure hunt. This immediacy and accessibility attracts younger collectors and helps ensure the future vitality of the hobby, and coins like this 1984 double die, with their spectacular visual appeal and significant value, serve as perfect ambassadors for the excitement and potential rewards that coin collecting can offer. Next, 2001 cent USA coin. Today you're going to want to stay until the very end because we're diving deep into one of the most misunderstood modern coins in American history. A coin most people have spent without a second thought. A coin that many believe could never be rare because it's so recent. Yet a coin surrounded by rumors, collector legends, and documented mint errors so extreme that under the right circumstances a single example could reach an eye-watering value of up to $12 million. Yes, you heard that right, $12 million for a 2001 cent coin. And as wild as that sounds, when you understand how errors happen, how rarity is created, and how the numismatic market reacts to unique mistakes, you'll see why this possibility continues to fascinate collectors, investors, and everyday treasure hunters alike, because the year 2000 marked more than just the turn of a new millennium. It represented massive pressure on the United States Mint, unprecedented production demands, transitional metal compositions, aging equipment, human error, and systemic stress that together created the perfect storm for some of the most dramatic and valuable mint mistakes imaginable. And to understand why a simple Lincoln cent from 2000 could be worth millions, we first have to understand the environment in which it was born. Because at the dawn of the new millennium, the mint was operating at full capacity, churning out billions of cents to meet public demand, pushing presses to their limits, recycling dies longer than intended, and operating multiple shifts with tight deadlines. And whenever speed overtakes precision, mistakes follow. And those mistakes are where extraordinary value begins, because unlike intentional mint variations, errors are accidents, and the rarer and more dramatic the accident, the more collectors are willing to pay. Especially when the error tells a story about the minting process itself, and the 2001 cent sits at the intersection of multiple high-risk factors including zinc planchets with copper plating, transitional die usage, potential off-metal strikes, double dies, mule errors, broad strikes, wrong planchet strikes, missing clad layers, and catastrophic die failures, all of which have produced six-figure and seven-figure coins in other years. And when multiple extreme errors combine on a single coin, that's when values explode into the millions. Because collectors aren't just buying a coin, they're buying a once-in-a-lifetime artifact that cannot be replicated. And one of the most talked about possibilities surrounding the 2000 cent is the idea of an off-metal strike, where the coin is struck on a planchet intended for another denomination or even a foreign coin. And while most off-metal errors are caught and destroyed, history has proven time and again that some escape, and when they do, they become instant legends. Because a 2000 Lincoln cent struck on a bronze planchet, a copper-nickel planchet, or even a silver planchet would already be worth a fortune. But if such a coin also carried a dramatic double die obverse or reverse, the value would multiply exponentially, because double dies are created during the die-making process, not during striking, meaning every coin struck from that defective die carries the same doubling. And while minor doubling is relatively common, dramatic hub doubling affecting the date, Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or Lincoln's portrait is exceedingly rare, especially in modern issues where quality control is tighter. And when collectors discover a bold, unmistakable double die from a year like 2000, it immediately attracts worldwide attention, auction competition, and record-breaking prices. And then there's the possibility of a mule error, one of the rarest and most valuable mint mistakes of all, where a coin is struck using mismatched dies, such as a Lincoln cent obverse paired with a die intended for another denomination or another series entirely. And while mules are incredibly rare, documented examples exist, proving that even with modern safeguards, mistakes can slip through, and a 2000 cent mule would be a numismatic bombshell, especially if the reverse die came from a proof, commemorative, or foreign issue, instantly making the coin unique. And uniqueness is the single most powerful driver of value in the coin world, because when there is only one, price becomes whatever the highest bidder is willing to pay, and history has shown us that collectors will pay millions for singular errors that redefine what is believed possible. And beyond dramatic mismatches, there are also catastrophic die breaks and retained cuts, where large portions of the die break away during striking, leaving massive raised blobs of metal on the coin's surface. And while small die breaks are common, full-scale retained cuts that distort major design elements are rare. And when combined with other errors such as off-center strikes or broad strikes where the collar fails and the coin spreads outward beyond its intended diameter, the result is a visually stunning error that looks nothing like a normal cent. And visual impact matters immensely in the high-end error market, because collectors want coins that immediately tell a story the moment they're seen. And the year 2000 also carries special symbolic weight, as Millennium Year coins attract crossover interest from non-collectors, investors, and even museums, which expands the pool of potential buyers far beyond traditional numismatics. And when demand increases while supply remains effectively 0 or 1, prices can reach levels that seem absurd until they're realized at auction. And we can't ignore the role of missing copper plating errors either, because the modern Lincoln cent is composed of a zinc core with a thin copper coating, and when that coating fails to bond properly, the result is a ghostly silver-gray cent that weighs less than normal and looks completely wrong. And while many missing plating cents are worth modest premiums, extreme examples where plating is entirely absent or unevenly missing on both sides, combined with additional errors like weak strikes or die deterioration, can command extraordinary sums, especially when certified and encapsulated by top grading services, because authentication transforms curiosity into legitimacy. And legitimacy is what allows million-dollar transactions to occur. And all of this brings us to the heart of the $12 million valuation claim, because that figure doesn't apply to just any 2,000 penny, it applies to a hypothetical perfect storm coin, one that combines multiple extreme mint errors, pristine preservation, undeniable authenticity, and intense collector competition, the kind of coin that would make headlines not just in numismatic circles but in mainstream media, drawing attention from wealthy collectors who see such a piece not just as a coin, but as a historical artifact, an investment vehicle, and a status symbol. And it's important to remember that some of the most valuable coins in the world were once considered impossible until they were discovered, dismissed until they were verified, and underestimated until they shattered auction records. And that's why collectors continue to search rolls, jars, and collections for modern cents. Because the lesson of numismatic history is that rarity doesn't always announce itself immediately. Sometimes it hides in plain sight for decades, waiting for the right eyes, the right knowledge, and the right moment to reveal its true worth. And the 2001 cent remains one of the most intriguing candidates for such a discovery because of its timing, its production volume, its material composition, and the documented reality that even in the modern era, mistakes happen, and when they do, they can turn a single copper-colored coin into a multi-million-dollar legend. Next, 2001 cent USA coin. Today we're going to explore one of the most fascinating modern Lincoln cents ever talked about, a coin that many people have casually spent without a second thought, the 2001 cent coin, a penny that on the surface looks ordinary, common, and nearly worthless, yet under very specific conditions and with extraordinary errors and net mistakes, collectors believe examples could be worth staggering sums, even reaching figures as high as $14 million in extreme theoretical cases. And as we settle in today, I want you to imagine the year 2000, a time when the United States Mint was producing billions of pennies to meet circulation demand during a booming economy, an era marked by massive production numbers, new technology mixed with old equipment, rush schedules, and a transition period that quietly created the perfect environment for mistakes. And those mistakes are exactly what make the 2001 cent so intriguing, so valuable, and so endlessly discussed among collectors, because when a coin is struck at the Denver Mint with the D Mint mark, it carries with it not just copper and zinc, but a story of machines, humans, timing, and chance all colliding at once. And the Lincoln cent itself already has one of the longest and most studied histories in American coinage. First introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, evolving through metal changes, design tweaks, and minting practices, and by the year 2000 the cent was composed of a zinc core with a thin copper plating, a construction that made it especially vulnerable to errors that simply didn't exist in earlier solid copper cents. And this vulnerability is one of the biggest reasons why some 2000 pennies are considered candidates for extraordinary value, because when something goes wrong during plating, striking, or die preparation, the results can be dramatic, visually stunning, and incredibly rare, and rarity combined with demand is the foundation of big money in numismatics. Now let's talk about the sheer scale of production, because the Denver Mint struck over 5.5 billion pennies in the year 2000, an almost unimaginable number, and whenever production reaches that level, quality control becomes a balancing act, with inspectors focused on obvious defects but unable to catch every anomaly, and in such an environment errors can slip through unnoticed, entering circulation and later becoming legendary discoveries. One of the most discussed error possibilities for the 2001 cent is the mule error, which is when a coin is struck using mismatched dies intended for different coins, such as a Lincoln cent obverse paired with a die from another denomination or even a different year or design. And while mule errors are exceedingly rare, they are among the most valuable errors ever sold, sometimes commanding millions of dollars, because they represent a breakdown in multiple layers of the minting process. And if a confirmed 2000 cent mule were discovered pairing Lincoln with an incorrect reverse not intended for cents, the numismatic world would erupt, driving values into the multi-million-dollar range almost overnight. Another major error category is the wrong planchet error, where a coin is struck on a blank intended for another denomination or even a foreign coin. And during the year 2000, the U.S. Mint was producing coins for multiple countries alongside U.S. circulation coins, increasing the risk of foreign planchets entering the production line. And if a 2000 Lincoln cent were struck on a planchet made of silver, brass, aluminum, or another alloy not intended for cents, the weight, color, and sound would immediately stand out, and authenticated examples of dramatic wrong planchet errors have sold for hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars depending on uniqueness. And when collectors speculate about a $14 million value, they are often imagining a perfect storm scenario where a 2000 cent is struck on a precious metal planchet, shows a dramatic off-center or double strike, and remains in pristine uncirculated condition, because condition multiplies value exponentially in rare errors. Speaking of double strikes, another highly prized error type is the multiple strike or double strike error, where a coin is struck more than once without being properly ejected from the press, resulting in overlapping designs, rotated images, or ghostly impressions that look almost surreal. And a 2000 penny showing an extreme double strike with clear separation between strikes could command enormous interest, especially if the second strike is off-center, revealing part of the blank planchet, and the more dramatic and visually obvious the error, the more collectors are willing to pay. Now let's move into doubled dies, which are often confused with machine doubling but are far rarer and more valuable. A true doubled die occurs during the creation of the working die when the design is impressed multiple times at slightly different angles, creating strong, rounded doubling visible on letters, numbers, and Lincoln's features. And while the most famous doubled die cent is the 1955, modern doubled dies are still highly collectible, and if a strong, previously unknown doubled die obverse or reverse were discovered on a 2000 cent with bold separation on the date, Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or even Lincoln's eye and beard, it would immediately become a key variety, and if only one or two examples were known, bidding wars could drive values into the millions, especially if the coin graded MS68 or higher by a major grading service. Another error possibility that excites collectors is the off-metal error combined with a broad strike or partial collar error, which occurs when the retaining collar fails to engage properly during striking, allowing the metal to spread outward and create an oversized coin with missing or distorted edges. And when this happens on a wrong planchet, the result can be a coin that looks completely alien, something that defies expectations and challenges understanding. And collectors love coins that tell a clear story of mechanical failure, because they are tangible evidence of the minting process breaking down. Now let's talk about transitional errors, which are particularly relevant around the year 2000, because transitional errors occur when leftover materials or dies from one production period are accidentally used during another. And while the Lincoln cent's major composition change occurred in 1982, there are always rumors and theories about experimental alloys, test planchets, or special compositions used internally at the mint. And if a 2000D cent were ever authenticated as being struck on a solid copper planchet, a bronze alloy, or some experimental metal never intended for circulation, the coin would instantly become one of the most important modern cents ever discovered, pushing values into uncharted territory. And this is where speculation about eight-figure values comes from, because the numismatic market places enormous premiums on uniqueness, provenance, and mystery. Now consider the role of die errors, such as cracked dies, shattered dies, cuds, and retained cuds, which occur when the die itself begins to fail after striking thousands or millions of coins. And while minor die cracks are common, massive retained cuds that distort large portions of the design are rare and visually impressive. And a 2000D penny showing a dramatic cud that removes part of the date, mint mark, or Lincoln's portrait could be a standout example, especially if paired with other errors, because combination errors are exponentially rarer than single errors, and combination errors are often the ones that break auction records. Another fascinating category is the missing or weak mint mark error. And while mint marks are punched into dies or added during die creation depending on the era, anomalies can occur, and a missing D mint mark on a coin clearly struck at Denver, confirmed through die markers and other diagnostics, would be an extraordinary find, because it would challenge assumptions about minting procedures in the modern era, and such a coin would attract intense scrutiny and demand. Now let's talk about plating errors, which are especially relevant to post-1982 cents, because the thin copper plating can blister, peel, split, or completely separate from the zinc core. And while minor plating blisters are common and not very valuable, extreme plating errors where large sections of copper are missing, folded, or improperly bonded can be quite valuable, especially when the underlying zinc corrodes in unusual patterns, creating dramatic visual effects. And if a 2000D cent showed a spectacular plating fold that covered parts of the design or created a layered, almost sculptural appearance, collectors would take notice. Now imagine all of these errors combined into one coin, a 2000D penny struck on a wrong planchet, double struck off center, with a strong double die and a retained cud, in pristine mint state condition, and you begin to understand how theoretical values can reach into the millions, because such a coin would not just be rare, it would be unique, a one-of-a-kind artifact of minting chaos, and in numismatics, uniqueness is priceless. Auction houses thrive on stories as much as metal, and a coin with an unbelievable story backed by scientific authentication becomes a media event, drawing attention from collectors, investors, museums, and even non-collectors fascinated by the idea that a penny could be worth more than a mansion. And this is why the 2000D1 cent continues to generate so much excitement, because billions were made. Yet the possibility of a hidden treasure remains. Now let's talk about grading and condition, because even the most spectacular error loses value if it's heavily worn, damaged, or cleaned, and coins that survive in uncirculated condition, especially with full luster and minimal contact marks, are exponentially more valuable. And if a major 2000D error were found in MS69 or even MS70 condition, which is nearly perfect, the price would skyrocket, because perfection in a flawed coin is paradoxically what collectors crave. And the population reports from grading services would play a huge role, because if only one example exists at a given grade, competition becomes fierce. And finally, we have to address the role of rumor, legend, and possibility, because while no confirmed 2000D penny has sold for $14 million as of now, numismatics is filled with examples of coins once thought impossible that later shattered expectations, such as the 1943 bronze cent or the 1974 aluminum cent. And collectors understand that the next great discovery could be sitting in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten roll of coins, and that hope fuels the search, keeps people checking their change, and keeps channels like the Coins Explorer alive and thriving, because every coin has a story, and some stories are worth millions. So the next time you see a 2000D penny, don't dismiss it as spare change. Look closely, weigh it, examine the details, because history has shown us time and time again that the smallest mistakes can create the biggest treasures, and that is why the 2000D 1 cent, under the right circumstances, with the right errors and the right condition, holds the potential to be one of the most valuable modern pennies ever imagined. And that's what makes coin collecting not just a hobby, but a journey of discovery, mystery, and endless possibility right here on the Coins Explorer. Next, 1994 1 cent USA coin. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most talked about modern-era Lincoln cents, the 1994 1 cent coin, a penny that many people remember as ordinary and forgettable, yet in rare circumstances has been whispered about in collector circles as being worth as much as $42 million, a figure that sounds impossible until you understand how the world of coin collecting works, how extreme rarity is born from accidents and mistakes, and how a combination of errors, timing, condition, and collector demand can elevate a humble copper-plated zinc cent into the stuff of legend. So settle in as we explore how a 1994 penny could ever reach such a staggering valuation, starting with the context of the year itself, because 1994 was a transitional period in modern U.S. coinage where technology was advanced yet still vulnerable to human oversight. The Philadelphia and Denver mints were producing billions of Lincoln cents to keep up with circulation demand, and while quality control was generally strong, the sheer volume of coins meant that mistakes were inevitable, and it is precisely these mistakes that create the rare outliers collectors dream of finding. The 1994 1 cent was struck primarily in copper-plated zinc, a composition introduced in 1982 to reduce costs, with a thin copper layer over a zinc core. And while this composition saved money, it also introduced new opportunities for dramatic errors, especially when plating, planchet preparation, and striking pressure were not perfectly aligned. One of the most valuable and sensational possibilities associated with a 1994 cent is the wrong planchet error, where a coin intended to be struck on a copper-plated zinc cent blank instead ends up being struck on a completely different metal, such as a bronze planchet left over from earlier years, or even more incredibly, on a planchet intended for another denomination entirely. And if a genuine 1994 cent were discovered struck on a pre-1982 solid copper bronze planchet, authenticated, and preserved in near-perfect condition, it would instantly become one of the rarest modern U.S. coins known, because by 1994 bronze planchets were not supposed to be anywhere near the cent presses, meaning such an error would represent a massive breakdown in mint procedures, the kind of breakdown that produces a coin that is unique or nearly unique. And uniqueness is one of the strongest drivers of extreme value, another legendary scenario that fuels the $42 million discussion is the possibility of a 1994 cent struck on a foreign or experimental planchet. The U.S. Mint has historically tested alternative metals and blanks, and while most experiments are tightly controlled, history has shown that experimental pieces have occasionally escaped into circulation. And if a 1994 cent were struck on an experimental alloy not intended for public release, the combination of mystery, rarity, and historical significance would push its value into the stratosphere, especially if documentation or metallurgical analysis confirmed it as an authentic mint experiment. Then there is the category of dramatic double die errors, which occur when a die receives a misaligned impression during its creation, causing elements of the design to appear doubled on the finished coin. While minor doubling is relatively common, a bold, clearly visible double die affecting major design elements like the date, Lincoln's portrait, or inscriptions can command enormous premiums. And if a previously unknown, extremely bold double die obverse or reverse were discovered on a 1994 cent, especially one showing heavy separation and not machine doubling, it would immediately become a key variety, and if it were the only example known or one of just a handful, collectors specializing in Lincoln cents would compete fiercely to own it. driving prices far beyond typical expectations. But errors alone do not create $42 million coins without the right circumstances, and that brings us to the role of condition, because in the world of numismatics, condition is everything. A coin with a rare error that is heavily worn may still be valuable, but a coin with the same error in pristine, uncirculated, mint state condition, with original luster intact and no post-mint damage, can be worth exponentially more. And when we start talking about hypothetical valuations in the tens of millions, we are assuming a coin graded at the very top of the scale, something like MS69 or even MS70, levels that are extraordinarily difficult to achieve for any circulation strike coin, let alone an error coin, yet it is not impossible, especially if the coin was immediately noticed, preserved, and protected from wear. Another powerful contributor to extreme value is the concept of transitional errors, which occur when the mint changes designs, compositions, or processes, and while 1994 is not known for a major official transition, subtle internal changes and die modifications were happening, and a coin that captured an unintended transitional moment, such as a mix of design elements, die styles, or compositions that were never meant to coexist, would be considered a numismatic anomaly of the highest order. Imagine a 1994 cent with design elements from a different year, or with a die pairing that was never officially recorded. Such a coin would rewrite part of the Lincoln cent reference. Books and coins that rewrite history tend to attract museum-level interest. Another aspect that feeds into these massive valuations is provenance, the documented history of a coin. If a 1994 cent with a spectacular error were discovered in an unusual way, perhaps found in a sealed mint bag, an old government collection, or tied to a specific mint event, the story itself would add to the coin's allure. Collectors do not just buy metal, they buy stories, and a story that connects a coin to a moment of failure or experimentation at the U.S. Mint adds emotional and historical weight, pushing values higher. And we cannot ignore the role of media and hype, because when a coin captures public imagination, especially one from a year many people remember, demand can skyrocket beyond traditional collector circles. Mainstream attention brings in investors, museums, and wealthy buyers who may not normally collect pennies, but are drawn to the uniqueness and prestige of owning a one-of-a-kind artifact. And when multiple ultra-wealthy buyers want the same singular object, price becomes almost irrelevant. Bidding wars can escalate into numbers that seem absurd compared to face value, yet make sense in the context of art, artifacts, and history. Another error possibility that often comes up in discussions of ultra-valuable cents is the off-metal mule or wrong denomination strike, where a cent design is struck using dies or planchets intended for another coin, or paired with an incorrect reverse. Mules are among the rarest mint errors because they require two completely incompatible components to come together, and if a 1994 Lincoln cent were paired with a reverse from another denomination or another country, confirmed as a genuine mint error and not a fabrication, it would instantly become legendary, with a value limited only by what the highest bidder is willing to pay. We also need to talk about the zinc core itself, because the copper-plated zinc cents of the modern era are notorious for plating errors, including missing plating, blistered plating, split plating, and improper bonding between the copper layer and zinc core. While most of these errors are relatively common and only worth modest premiums, an extreme plating error combined with another major error, such as a double die or wrong planchet, could create a compound error of unprecedented rarity. And compound errors are particularly prized because the odds of multiple independent mistakes occurring on the same coin are astronomically low, and rarity on that level is what pushes coins into eight-figure territory. Another theoretical but fascinating scenario is the existence of a 1994 cent struck in pure copper or another precious metal as a presentation or test strike. While no such coin is officially documented, numismatic history teaches us that undocumented pieces sometimes surface decades later, and when they do, They challenge what we thought we knew about mint operations. If such a coin were discovered, scientifically verified, and tied to internal mint experimentation, it would be a crown jewel of modern U.S. coinage, and collectors would value it not just as a coin, but as a unique historical artifact. And then, there is the psychological factor of accessibility, the idea that a coin from 1994, something that could theoretically still be found in a jar of old change, fuels dreams and keeps interest alive. Unlike ancient or colonial coins that feel distant, a 1994 penny feels personal. It connects the collector emotionally to the possibility that extraordinary value can hide in plain sight, and that emotional connection drives engagement, speculation, and willingness to pay extreme prices for the ultimate example. The $42 million figure represents not a typical market value, but a perfect storm scenario. Where the coin is unique or nearly unique, the error is dramatic and undeniable, the condition is flawless, the provenance is compelling, and the demand includes not just collectors, but institutions and investors. In such a scenario, traditional price guides become meaningless. The coin would likely be sold privately or through a high-profile auction, where the narrative surrounding it would be carefully presented, emphasizing its singular nature and its place in numismatic history. And it is important to understand that while most 1994 pennies are worth 1 cent, the existence of even one coin with such extraordinary characteristics elevates the entire year into the realm of fascination, reminding us why collectors examine dates, mint marks, and details so closely, because the difference between a common coin and a priceless treasure can come down to a tiny mistake made in a fraction of a second at the mint, and that is the magic of coin collecting, the idea that perfection and imperfection collide to create something extraordinary. So the next time you see a 1994 1-cent coin, remember that while it is almost certainly ordinary, the story of what could exist, the possibility of errors, mistakes, and rare combinations, is what keeps collectors searching, learning, and dreaming, and that is why here on the Coins Explorer we continue to dig into these stories, because every coin has a history, and sometimes that history includes the potential to be worth millions, not because of what it was meant to be, but because of what went wrong in the most fascinating way imaginable. Next, 1978 D1 cent USA coin. The Coins Explorer, the channel where everyday pocket change turns into unbelievable stories of hidden wealth, rare mistakes, and astonishing possibilities. And today we are diving deep into one of the most talked about modern Lincoln cents that has sparked rumors, legends, and intense collector interest around the world, the 1978 D1 cent, a coin most people have seen, spent, or ignored without a second thought, yet one that under the right circumstances, with the right combination of errors, mint mistakes, preservation, rarity, and market timing, has been connected to jaw-dropping valuations that stretch into the tens of millions of dollars, including the widely discussed idea that a single extraordinary example could theoretically command a value as high as $51 million. And while that number sounds unbelievable at first, the deeper you explore the complex world of minting anomalies, transitional varieties, die production failures, composition errors, off-metal strikes, dramatic die clashes, doubled dies, missing mint marks, wrong planchet errors, and ultra-high-grade survivorship, the more you begin to understand how a seemingly common Denver minted penny from 1978 can transform from loose change into a numismatic phenomenon, because the late 1970s were a fascinating and turbulent time for United States coin production, with the mint under pressure to produce massive quantities of cents for circulation while dealing with aging equipment, experimental materials, cost-cutting measures, and human oversight, all of which created the perfect environment for mistakes to slip through, and the Denver Mint in particular was striking hundreds of millions of cents in 1978, using copper alloy planchets composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, a composition that was about to change in the early 1980s, meaning that 1978 sits at a critical point, just before one of the most important transitions in Lincoln cent history, and transitional periods are notorious for producing rare and valuable errors, because leftover materials, test planchets, and experimental blanks sometimes get mixed into regular production, creating coins that technically should not exist. And when such coins survive in pristine condition, they become the holy grail for collectors, investors, and museums alike. And one of the most valuable possibilities associated with the 1978 D cent is an off-metal strike, where the coin is struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination or even a foreign coin, such as aluminum experimental planchets, bronze alloy test blanks, or even silver-based materials that were never meant for cent production. And if a confirmed 1978 D penny were discovered struck on an unauthorized experimental metal with full design detail, sharp strike, and verified mint origin, its uniqueness alone could place it in a category where price becomes almost theoretical rather than fixed, because when a coin is truly one of a kind, the value is determined by what a single determined buyer is willing to pay. And history has shown that collectors have paid tens of millions for coins that break the rules of existence. And beyond off-metal strikes, there are extreme double die errors that can elevate a 1978 D cent into legendary status, especially when the doubling is bold, widespread, and clearly visible to the naked eye across Lincoln's profile, the date, the word liberty, and the motto "In God We Trust." Because double dies are created during the die-making process, when the hub impresses the design onto the die more than once at slightly different angles, and while minor doubling is relatively common, dramatic double dies that escape detection are rare, and when they appear on high-mintage coins, like the 1978 D cent, they can ignite massive collector demand due to their visibility and historical intrigue. And if such a double die were paired with an additional error, such as an off-center strike, a misaligned die, or a rotated die, the value multiplies exponentially because collectors prize compound errors far more than single anomalies. And another powerful value driver tied to the 1978 D cent is the possibility of a wrong planchet error involving dime, quarter, or even foreign blanks, where the cent design is struck onto a smaller or larger metal disc, resulting in missing design elements, distorted lettering, and unusual weights that instantly signal something extraordinary. And if such a coin were authenticated, graded at a high level, and accompanied by impeccable provenance tracing it back to original circulation finds or mint sources, its desirability would soar beyond traditional price guides, entering the realm of private negotiations and auction spectacle. And then there are dramatic die errors like massive die breaks, retained cut errors, or shattered dies that leave raised blobs of metal, cracks, and missing sections of the design, turning the coin into a visual record of a die literally failing during production. And while minor die cracks are common, catastrophic failures that still produce fully struck coins are rare, and when they occur on a date like 1978 D with strong collector interest, they can become centerpieces of advanced collections. And when such an error coin also survives in near-perfect condition with blazing original luster and minimal contact marks, the rarity compounds, because error coins were often pulled from circulation quickly or mishandled, making high-grade survivors exceptionally scarce. And condition plays a critical role in pushing values into the stratosphere, because a coin that is technically rare but heavily worn will never command the same attention as one preserved in mint state or proof-like quality. And the idea of a $51 million valuation is rooted in the convergence of extreme rarity, historical significance, flawless preservation, and intense demand, the same forces that have driven other legendary coins to record-breaking prices. And another fascinating angle surrounding the 1978 D cent involves missing or weak mint marks, where the D mint mark is absent or barely visible due to grease-filled dies or improper punch alignment. And while missing mint marks alone are not always extraordinarily valuable, when combined with other anomalies, they can add another layer of intrigue that attracts specialists. and grease-filled dies can also cause missing letters, numbers, or design elements, creating coins that look eerily incomplete, with Lincoln's features partially erased or inscriptions fading into the surface. And these ghostly appearances captivate collectors because they reveal the behind-the-scenes chaos of mass production. And there is also the possibility of a double denomination error, where a coin is struck by more than one denomination die, resulting in overlapping designs that defy logic. And while such errors are exceedingly rare, they are among the most valuable and famous in numismatics. And if a 1978 D cent were ever discovered bearing traces of another denomination's design, its value would be essentially unbounded and beyond physical errors. Market psychology plays a crucial role in pushing prices higher, because when a coin captures public imagination through headlines, viral stories, and record-setting auction results, demand surges not just among traditional collectors, but also investors, institutions, and wealthy individuals seeking tangible assets with historical cachet. And this influx of capital can drive prices far beyond what traditional valuation models would predict, especially when supply is fixed and demand continues to grow. And the Lincoln Cent series has one of the largest and most passionate collector bases in the world, meaning that any coin within this series that breaks expectations has an enormous audience ready to compete for ownership. And the 1978 D cent sits at a perfect intersection of familiarity and mystery, because it looks ordinary at first glance. Yet under magnification it can reveal secrets that challenge everything we think we know about modern coinage. And as more collectors search rolls, hoards, and inherited collections, the possibility of a new discovery remains alive, fueling speculation and excitement. And it is this sense of possibility that keeps values climbing, because the next great find could be sitting unnoticed in a jar, drawer, or box right now, waiting for someone to look closer. And when we talk about $51 million, we are not talking about an average 1978 D penny, but about the absolute pinnacle example, the perfect storm of errors, rarity, condition, and timing, the kind of coin that rewrites record books and becomes part of numismatic legend, the kind of coin that museums would fight to display and collectors would dream of owning. And this is why the 1978 D 1 cent continues to fascinate, inspire, and fuel stories of unimaginable value, because in the world of coin collecting, history, chance, and human error sometimes align to create something truly priceless. And every time you examine your change, you are participating in that story, continuing a tradition of discovery that proves even the smallest coin can carry the biggest surprise. Last 1983 1 cent USA coin. Today you're about to hear one of the most shocking and unbelievable stories in modern coin collecting, a story that proves once again that history, mistakes, and pure chance can turn a simple penny into a fortune worth up to $74 million. Because today we are diving deep into the mysterious, controversial, and endlessly fascinating world of the 1983 1 cent coin. A coin that millions of people once ignored, spent, or tossed into jars, never realizing that certain rare examples could be among the most valuable coins ever imagined. And as we explore this story together, keep in mind that the 1983 penny was born during one of the most chaotic and transitional periods in United States mint history, a time when materials were changing, technology was imperfect, human oversight was stretched thin, and errors slipped through the cracks in ways that would create legends decades later. Because 1983 was only the second year after the U.S. Mint officially switched the Lincoln Cent from its traditional bronze composition to a copper-plated zinc core, a change driven by rising copper prices that threatened to make pennies cost more than they were worth. And while this change may sound simple on paper, in reality it created an environment ripe for confusion, overlap, and catastrophic minting mistakes, since leftover bronze planchets from 1982 were still present in the system. Machinery had to be recalibrated, quality control processes were adapting, and workers were dealing with mixed materials moving through the production lines, all of which set the stage for what many experts believe is one of the greatest error coin mysteries of all time, the legendary 1983 bronze cent, a coin that officially should not exist yet is rumored, hunted, whispered about, and fiercely debated among collectors worldwide, because if even a single confirmed genuine example exists, its value could soar into the tens of millions of dollars, especially when combined with the right condition, provenance, and authentication, and that is where the staggering $74 million figure comes from, not as a random exaggeration but as a theoretical ceiling based on precedent, rarity, historical importance, and collector psychology, because we've seen what happened with the 1943 bronze cent, a coin that was never supposed to exist either. Yet one sold for millions due to a similar wartime metal transition error, and the 1983 bronze cent follows that same pattern but with even more mystery attached, since unlike 1943, no undisputed publicly confirmed specimen has ever been officially certified, which paradoxically makes the possibility even more valuable, because the first real one would rewrite numismatic history overnight, and beyond the bronze composition error alone. The 1983 penny is a breeding ground for other major mistakes that compound its value potential, including double dies, off-metal strikes, wrong planchet errors, transitional errors, die clashes, broad strikes, misaligned dies, and plating anomalies that can dramatically increase desirability, especially when more than one error appears on the same coin, creating what collectors call a multi-error monster. And when you consider that billions of 1983 cents were struck across multiple mints during a year of material chaos, the probability that some extreme errors escape detection becomes far more plausible, especially since pennies are the most overlooked denomination in circulation, meaning mistakes could sit unnoticed for decades in jars, drawers, or rolls, slowly aging while their potential value quietly grows. And one of the most critical factors that makes the 1983 penny so special is the weight test, because a standard 1983 copper-plated zinc cent weighs approximately 2.5 grams, while a bronze cent weighs about 3.11 grams. And that simple difference has fueled countless searches, as collectors and everyday people alike weigh their 1983 pennies hoping to find one that breaks the rules. And stories persist of coins weighing closer to the bronze standard, sparking speculation, excitement, and sometimes heartbreak when testing reveals plated steel, altered surfaces, or post-mint modifications. But the hunt continues because the reward is unimaginable, and the idea that a penny from 1983 could pay for generations of wealth is too powerful to ignore. And what truly drives the $74 million valuation is not just the coin itself but the perfect storm of circumstances that would surround a confirmed discovery, including the intense media attention, the bidding wars between elite collectors, museums, and private investors, the historical comparison to legendary era coins, and the fact that the Lincoln Cent series is one of the most widely collected series in the world, meaning demand would be global and emotional, not just financial. And emotion plays a massive role in numismatic pricing, because collectors don't just buy metal, they buy stories, myths, and once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, and the 1983 penny represents all three at the highest level, especially when paired with dramatic errors like double die obverse where the date, liberty, or "In God We Trust" appears clearly doubled due to misaligned die impressions during hubbing, a mistake that can multiply value exponentially even on otherwise common coins. And while confirmed double dies for 1983 exist, and are already valuable, the possibility of an undiscovered dramatic example keeps interest alive. And then there are off-metal strikes, where a penny could be struck on a planchet intended for another denomination or composition entirely, which during a transitional year like 1983 becomes far more plausible, and if such a coin were confirmed as genuine and original, its uniqueness would push it into elite territory, especially if the metal content contradicted official mint records, because collectors place immense value on coins that challenge what we think we know about minting history, and mistakes like die clashes, where obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghostly impressions that add character and intrigue, further enhance desirability, especially when combined with other errors and plating errors on 1983 zinc cents, such as missing copper plating, bubbles, blisters, or peeling layers. Highlight just how unstable the early zinc cents could be, reinforcing the idea that something far more dramatic could have gone wrong unnoticed. And while many plating errors are relatively common, extreme examples in pristine condition still command strong premiums, showing that even smaller mistakes can have real value, which feeds the larger belief that a monumental error could exist. And what makes the 1983 penny even more compelling is that it sits at a crossroads of skepticism and belief within the numismatic community, with some experts insisting no genuine bronze examples exist, while others argue that the minting environment made it entirely possible, and this tension fuels interest, debate, and relentless searching, because as long as the mystery remains unsolved, the story continues, and unresolved stories are the most powerful kind. And when you factor in condition rarity, the idea that a flawless mint state example of a major error could surface elevates the price projections even further, because collectors pay staggering premiums for perfection, especially when perfection meets impossibility, and that is how a penny theoretically reaches $74 million, not because every 1983 cent is valuable, but because one impossible example could redefine the limits of the hobby. And as you listen to this, there may be 1983 pennies sitting just a few feet away from you, coins you've never looked at twice, coins that represent a year of transition, confusion, and opportunity, and that is why the 1983 one set remains one of the most searched, discussed, and dreamed about coins in modern history, because it reminds us that value is not always obvious, that mistakes can become miracles, and that sometimes the smallest coin can carry the biggest story. And this is exactly why collectors around the world continue weighing, examining, and hoping, because the next great discovery could come from anywhere, and if it does, it will instantly become one of the most famous coins ever known, changing the life of whoever finds it forever. And that possibility is what keeps the legend of the 1983 penny alive, breathing, and endlessly fascinating for anyone who believes that hidden treasure still exists in plain sight.